Hello, everyone. I'm hoping you can hear us. It's Marylou Tyler. I'm here with Max from Panda Duck. And
Hello,
we
all.
are, yes, there he is. Thank goodness. A couple logistics before we get started is, number one, this is a hands-on, kind of roll up your sleeves, in the trenches, tactical webinar. It's not going to be a lot of theory other than telling you the why behind I want you to learn this stuff. I'm taking chapters 1 through 3 of Predictable Prospecting, which is a new book that we released in 2016 in August. It's the second generation of a book called Predictable Revenue, which some of you may have read. And it really dives deeper into creating a predictable stream of qualified opportunities that you can close with a higher conversion rate. So one of the things I want to get done before we get started here is that if you have any questions and, burning questions or just any questions you have, there's a question area that you can put your questions in. We may not get to it in this particular webinar, but we will answer your question and get back to you in some fashion. We have all of your email addresses, so we can definitely share. What I do typically is if I get a lot of the same question, is I do a mini presentation and dive deeper into that, whether it's video, audio, or just text. I will answer your question and expand on the why. So today's webinar is all about how to target your audience in order to generate qualified opportunities that are consistent and predictable so that if you want to scale, you can. So a little bit about who I am. Essentially, Marylou Tyler, I am an engineer specializing in sales strategy. I started working in lead generation in 1987, before some of you may have even been born, and before the internet for sure. And I really specialize in outreach, working with all of the different areas of outreach, whether it be outbound prospecting, whether it be working through leads coming in from marketing. We call them marketing qualified leads. And in 2011, I worked with Aaron Ross on producing a book called Predictable Revenue, which was a case study for a very small company at the time called Salesforce.com. And then in 2016, I took all those concepts that we worked on in 2011 and did 5 more years of field research in order to be able to produce this book. This book is loaded with examples. It's essentially working on the pieces of the pipeline that start with starting conversations with people we don't know and taking them all the way through to qualified opportunity. Now, some of you will recognize the sales pipeline frustrations that most of my clients experience. The first one is that we either have poor lead generation or no lead generation, which leads to our inability to really forecast accurately. And one of the topics that I think is near and dear to the heart of most of us here is that we have leads coming in, but we don't necessarily know the value of those leads. We can't really assign a priority. Some may be minnows, some may be whales, and we want to really work the whales as much as possible to maximize our return. So the poor sales time utilization is all about these reps working all these different types of leads and not necessarily knowing how to prioritize them. The next thing that I see a lot is that because of the fact that we have reps that are working leads that may not be as valuable, the growth and revenue is very inconsistent. We don't have the ability to create a forecast that's very even looking. It's high, it's low, it's up, it's down. I'm sure most of you are crazy at the end of quarter trying to get business closed. And lastly, we have limited visibility into how we're penetrating our accounts. Are we really selling into those accounts that are going to bring the lifetime value for us, the high revenue accounts, the clients that we want? There's definitely a way for us to do this. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is how we go about essentially creating and targeting the right accounts so that we can scale our business if we want to. So this example throughout is based on a fictitious company. It's a company who sells employee satisfaction surveys to financial services and banks, just so you know. So when you see these work examples that are coming up, it's essentially I'm putting together all of these constructs that I'm going to teach you today for selling into this financial services market. Now, when we target for predictability, which is the subject of this webinar, there are 3 pillars that I want you to really internalize. The first one is called a SWOT 6. Now, some of you may know what a SWOT is: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But the book in chapter 1 now takes 6 other constructs and overlays them to the SWOT. Why do we do this? Because we want to really understand who our target market is, but we want to know where we fit in that market. It's all about trying to create a stream of accounts that we have a high probability of closing with a high revenue potential. The next construct we're going to go through today is the ideal account profile. Now, this was also discussed in predictable revenue, but we've expanded upon it based on our work in the field with clients. And the last one is the ideal prospect profile. Now, this was not discussed in predictable revenue, and it was a little bit of a disservice to our target audiences because we got the accounts, but we couldn't figure out the people within the accounts in order to be able to start conversation. So this section you guys will love because I have a big suite of examples of what you need to do in order to generate the right people and where they are positionally in the pipeline so you know where to start conversation and when to start conversation and with whom. Now, one more thing about these documents and these examples that I'm going through is that we are going to prepare these examples for you so that you can download them as part of the, maybe not this webinar, but maybe the next one, right, Max? Is that what we're thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about you, Marylou, is you've got more intellectual property and templates. I mean, you've got enough to sink a ship. So we've got a whole marketing team that's working hard on putting this stuff together for easy download and make them available as templates. So you've got some great working examples, but you also provide things as templates. So a lot of the folks on the webinar today have PandaDoc or are on a PandaDoc trial. So we'll be making these templates available through PandaDoc, downloadable as templates so that these people can start working within those templates right away.
Very good. So the first construct we're going to talk about is what I call the SWOT 6. And it's a 6-factor: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And what we're going to do here is we're going to fill out a form together that allows us to really understand why people should change from what they're doing now, our prospects, why they should change now, and why choose you. In order to do that, we have to really understand where we fit in the marketplace. Now, this particular exercise, if you can gather your team, and typically what I do is I go in with the C-suite, so it would be the director of sales ops, the director of sales, the director of marketing, and maybe even the CEO if it's a small enough company. And we get in a room and we go through this exact same method that I'm going to teach you right now. So first of all, why the SWOT 6? Why are we doing this? Well, as I mentioned to you, we're really trying to understand our position in the marketplace. Where are the shortfalls? Where are the contrasts? Where is the gap? Where do we fit? You know, how are we going to internalize our value in order to be able to communicate that with our prospects? This is all about looking at us versus the competition, looking at us versus what the clients are using now, and trying to get them to understand there's a big gap between what they've got now and what they could possibly have if they use our product or service. So it's all about, like taking the ego out of the pocket, just opening up the wounds and figuring out where you fit in the marketplace. That's the one exact result of the SWOT 6. So the first factor that we overlay is called the 4 Ps, and it's essentially the product, the price, the promotion, and the place. And we basically take our product and we answer all these questions about product. You know, what are our clients purchasing? Is it a recurring product? Is it a one-time product? What's the lifetime value of that product? Then we're going to go to the price, you know, which is the money exchange for goods and services. How much are people willing to pay for this type of product? We also want to look at how we're promoting. How is this product being promoted or advertised? Is it online, offline, both? And then, of course, the next place we look at is place, which is this sold online only? Is it a brick and mortar for those of you who are consumer-based? What are the distribution channels that we're using to sell this product? So we fill that in, and it'll look something like this. This is one that's filled out for you. Again, you don't need to memorize this. This is just giving you an idea of us filling out the SWOT with the 4 Ps in mind: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and then overlay that with product, price, promotion, and place. So these forms, as we said, will be available for you filled out, and also we'll put some blank ones out there for you to start working through. The next factor is called reputation, and the reputation factors are either customers or partners. Under the customers area, we're looking for who are our most loyal customers. How do they engage with us? How long do they stay with us? Are we in the accounts that we want to be in? When I did this with a client one time, we looked at who their customers were after they did who they wanted as customers. There was a huge disconnect. They had the desired customer, maybe 1/8 of their customer base was the desired customer. The rest were not desirable customers. So we had a lot of work to do in preparing the list in order to be able to add more of the core customers that they really wanted inside of this outbound process. This will help you see that. A lot of times we're so busy working accounts, we have no idea the quality of the account that we're working. The SWOT 6 will help you focus on that. Same thing with partners. We go through, if we're selling through a partner channel, how loyal are they? How much do they engage with us? What kind of growth can we expect from them? Do they give us referrals? And do we retain them as partners? So once again, here's the SWOT filled out for those 2 areas for you to look at offline. But you can see we're starting to build this big strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats matrix as a result of doing it 6 times. Factor number 3 is internal resources. This is where you're looking at things like your financials, your intellectual property, how important your human capital is. For those of you in services company, you're going to fill in human capital pretty heavily because these are the people that are servicing your clients. Their knowledge, their expertise, their culture, their leadership capability. And also you're looking at physical assets. What kind of facilities are you in? What kind of equipment do you have? Things like that are used to fill in factor number 3. So once again, here, look at all these things that we filled out for factor number 3 for the SWOT, the internal resources. So just take a moment to look at that. External factor number 4 is external forces. Here we're looking at customer factors and supplier factors. We're looking essentially of in our marketplace, how strong is the customer? Do they have the bargaining power, or are we more in control? You know, you have to be really honest with yourself here because this is where your pricing comes into play. Do you have the ability to set pricing, or are you going to be constantly negotiating the price question? This is where that fills in. Supplier factors would be essentially if your product is serviced by suppliers, do they have control over you with what they set for pricing? This is usually for people who have products that they're selling, may not be SaaS related, but again, what this is doing is it's forcing you to think through all the different things that can happen to you in the SWOT. Competitive, customer, supplier is the external forces area. Once again, example of me filling this out for that SWOT area. Take a look. The last one, I combined two. It's trends and what we call VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous occurrences. Again, this is now you're looking under trends. What's the social demographic of your product or service? How is technology impacting your product or service? What's going to happen as we start to go further into technology? Does it impact you? A person who should have done this, a company that should have done this was Blockbuster, for example. They had no SWOT to handle the fact that the internet was coming. They were holding steady to their brick and mortar stores, and we all know what happened with that. So this is, again, a good exercise and a good lesson that the SWOT has to be revisited often. It's not something you set once and forget it. You're constantly looking at it. And what we've done is we've given you all these ways to think about your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats under all these different umbrellas, so that when you finish, which is what basically after this particular slide, I'll show you the completed SWOT. So what we've done is we've taken all those 6 factors with all those items, we've prioritized them as a team in what we think are the most important ones, and we have now come up with the SWOT. This exercise typically, just so you know, takes a couple of hours to go through with your team. A lot of times what I do is I give people a list of 50 some odd questions, which we will provide to you, and they do their homework. So they fill out the homework by answering all those questions. They come to the meeting prepared, and then we go through each of those sections of the SWOT. If you have any questions on the SWOT at all, now's the time to put them in the question area. But what you'll get now from us will be the SWOT example, the 50 some odd questions that we ask in order to prepare for the SWOT, and then the templates of how to put this thing together. Anything to add on that, Max?
No, I would say that going through it myself, to be honest, after reading your book, I really enjoyed the middle of the book where we talk about engage, which is, on our next webinar. But after going through the SWOT analysis for PandaDoc, as we're going through your process, extremely helpful, especially when talking with members of the sales team who maybe have really been educated on how to sell, but really haven't gone through this exercise on how PandaDoc is positioned in the marketplace, which is extremely important when talking to very educated buyers who have been doing their research. And I think it's all in the name of educating the sales team just as much as the buyers are now being educated on their own.
Right. And I will tell you all, this particular SWOT is the hardest thing that I'm going to ask you to do of all of this, because it's really sort of getting down into the nitty-gritty of why people should care about you. It's how you're positioned in the marketplace, why people should buy from you. That's the SWOT. So once you get through that exercise, and it is painful, then you'll come out of it knowing where you're positioned. And as a sales rep, think about that. When you're on a conversation with somebody and you know from your heart why you matter, that's going to come across in your conversation. So going through that SWOT, not just receiving a completed SWOT, but actually taking part in building it, is the way that you're going to be better on the phone when you're communicating with prospects. And it's also going to be, you're going to be better able to suggest the next step in the sales process in order to get them from that initial conversation through to close one. The next concept we're going to talk. Yes.
Marylou, just one more thing as you transition into the ideal account profile. I found myself as I was working through the ideal account profile, constantly flipping back into the SWOT analysis and sort of answering a lot of the questions I had in my head about why some accounts were performing better than others. That SWOT analysis really gave some insight as to why that might be happening. So it all sort of builds on itself.
It does build on itself, and I think to support what you just said, I had a client in New York City that we worked on. Actually, it's the co-author of the book, Jeremy Donovan. And we went through the SWOT exercise together, and we discovered that in the database, their house list, they were very, very short on the number of accounts that they needed in order to be able to build the revenue they were looking for, but they didn't have any idea of that until we went through the SWOT. It started to paint its own picture of who these ideal people are, where they're located, how they buy from us, and how long they stay with us. Because you've gone through that SWOT, you'll be able to really tell somebody where they're a good fit or where they're not. And in your head, you'll know where you should be spending time and where you shouldn't, which is what we're coming to now with the ideal account profile. The purpose of the ideal account profile is return on effort, period, end of discussion. What that means is if you have 10 accounts that are in your list and 2 of them are in the ideal account profile, then don't bother with the other 8. Try to get more of the 2 and work those, because your time is valuable as a sales executive or a sales manager. You want your people working on high lifetime value, high, essentially, revenue accounts, especially if you're looking to put in an outreach type of channel, which is predictable prospecting is really about taking a lead, whether it's a marketing qualified lead or a self-generated lead, and putting it through a predictable process so that out-pops the ideal client with a higher conversion ratio. These 20% numbers that I keep hearing in the marketplace as being the acceptable close rate, no, I do not believe that. I think because we are targeting the accounts we want to go after, our close ratios by definition should be higher. The reason why they're lower is because we're working those minnows as well as the whales. And we really want to get the whales first and get those in and let the inbound marketing, self-selecting type of channels bring in those little minnow guys. We really want to be able to spend our time face-to-face, person-to-person with high-quality accounts. So the ideal account profile, I want you to think 2 things. Focus on high and think segment. Okay? Let's go to that next slide. In order to think segment, there are 3 areas that you're going to concentrate on. 1 is the firmographic, 2 is the operational, and 3 is the situational. Now, on the right-hand side here, it's giving you examples of some of those things. Firmographic would be the industry they're in, the size, maybe number of employees or the revenue, the geography, that's firmographic. Operational is equipment and technology, purchasing policies. For example, purchasing policies are important because we want to know if something is done local branch or multi-branch. Where is that decision made? Where is it going to be sitting as we move from opportunity to close and trying to get a PO, for example? Situational is essentially whatever their strategic initiatives are. We want to really understand that because we are positioning our product based on high priority initiatives of our clients. It breeds that sense of urgency that we're looking for. So here's 4 rules, 4 Marylou rules of picking segments. Number 1 is to identify the right number of target companies. And I know that sounds vague, but essentially because we have technology now, we can leverage querying databases, our house list. We can look at third-party vendors, and we can tell them based on our ideal account profile what we're looking for from a query point of view and get counts from them. All we want is counts of how many of these things are available for us out there. We want to know that. So we want to develop the right number. We can't tell a rep, I want you to go after these large accounts. Oh, by the way, you only have 10 of them. We have to give them enough of a number so that they can work it because the top of funnel is still a mathematical equation. We have to have so many. So in predictable revenue, for example, we wanted the sales development reps to have at least 250 contacts per week. We assumed there would be 3 contacts per account, which means every week we wanted them to send emails to at least 80 accounts. That would yield 8 to 10 qualified opportunities a month for the account executives to work. So those kinds of formulas, will need to understand, and picking that right number is very important for that. Number 2 is make sure that the factors are measurable. We don't want any vanity factors. We don't want anything that is qualitative. We really need quantitative factors. If it's a judgment call, we want to make sure that we're focusing on high impact and low cost. That's where we're at. So when you're thinking of your segment, focus on high impact, low cost factors in order to be able to pick which accounts would be ideal for you to go after. Number 3 is factors identify distinct target segments. Okay, what that means is we want to make sure that each segment we target has needs that align to the work we did in the SWOT. What are our strengths? Make sure that the strengths we have align to the needs of the client. If your weaknesses align to the needs, not a good fit, right? But if your strengths align to the needs, that's great. So we want to make sure that we're really looking at that as well. Number 4 is to make sure that you have a stable segmentation. I put this in there because with younger companies, we know we're going to probably pivot. So don't beat yourself up if you go through this IAP and all of a sudden realize when you start activating the framework that it's not working the way you wanted. I would say probably 25% of my clients end up pivoting after they've done their IAP work and they've actually started the activation. If you're a more established company, you don't see it as much. But startups, definitely. We're trying to figure out where we fit. We think we know, and so we put our sort of stake in the sand on that. But then once we start activating, because we're putting a process in place, the metrics will tell us right away whether we're on target or not. So that one, as stable as you can get it, knowing that you may need to pivot at some point or maybe add in another segment. So here's the sample IAP filled out. And once again, we will have the documents for you already done. We'll have examples for you, and then you can build your own as well. Here we go with the situational pieces. You can see how we put in quite a bit of information. Some of this information is used as query parameters to the list vendors. Some of it is used internally to help us with marketing initiatives, or if we're putting together content assets for marketing, we use that as well. So that really is it for the IAP. Chapter 2 of the book goes into more detail. We'll have all those forms for you. Anything you want to add, Max?
Nope.
All right. So now we're going
but I appreciate it.
Now we're going into the ideal prospect profile. So I wish I knew how to raise hands here, but a lot of the sales reps that I talk with, when I mention profiles or prospect profiles or buyer personas, the answer overwhelmingly is marketing has already prepared those for us. And I'm here to tell you today that that's great, but I want you to take marketing buyer persona profiles and use them as a baseline for your own sales-driven prospect profile. The reason is very simple. The call to action or the result of a marketing buyer profile is to get someone to raise his hand saying, I am either interested or I'm ready to evaluate your product. But what we just went through with the SWOT and the IAP was to target accounts that we're going to go after. We are going to chase. We are going to start communication with them. We cannot use a marketing profile that says, I only want people who've raised their hand. We want to reach out to people who are maybe unaware that we exist. They may be unaware they have a problem. They may be unaware that there's a solution to their problem. So you can see right there, there's 3 different levels unaware, problem aware, and solution aware that these marketing persona profiles don't even address. So we need to take their profile, and what we're going to do now together is work on our prospect profile. This is no different than when I was back in development, back in the day, working on operating system code. We would create personas of how people are going to use our operating system, their programming persona profiles. And we need the same thing for sales. So if you have one thing to take away from today, it's that you are going to create a prospect profile just for sales, to flood your pipeline with the best opportunities possible, to reduce the lag, reduce the leakage, increase the efficiency in that ROE, the return on effort, and then get those deals done faster. That's what the prospect profile does. So again, to enforce why marketing profiles for personas are good but not great for sales. And here's some, if you need a reason to go to your marketing and say, give me a start and I'll take it from there. Marketing is about features and benefits. Sales is all about trying to get people to think outside the box. It's to agitate them, to poke them, to get them to start thinking, wow, life could be better than it is now. That's what sales has to do. And we're all about results. We're all about painting the picture of how life will be once they use our product. Marketing is all about these great benefits. Are you interested? Do you want to try it? Are you interested? Do you want to evaluate it? That's not us. We are all about, look, you need this thing. You are deficient without it. And follow me and I'll take you through how to obtain it. So that's one. The second thing, marketing is talking one-to-many. Sales, we are one-to-one. We are person-to-person communication. We're talking one-to-one. The persona profile has to be able to identify those people at the right point in the pipeline that we want to have conversation with. And it may be different depending on where these people are and what stage of the pipeline we're at. And I'll show you a little bit about that in the next couple slides. The other thing is marketing does buyer stage mapping. We are looking at buyer thought process. Where are they in their thoughts? Are they unaware? Are they problem aware? Are they solution aware? Again, we have 5 levels of awareness we need to worry about. Marketing is only worrying about 2 right now, to get people to fill out a form and so they can have a lead and a marketing qualified lead for us. Mass storytelling. Once again, we are in marketing trying to capture as many people in our net as possible. So we're going to tell stories that are going to affect a lot of different people in a lot of different areas. But as we just talked about in the IAP, sales is all about vivid, personal storytelling. We want to be able to go right to that role, and that whoever it is, the IT guy, the marketing guy, the sales guy, we want to be able to tell stories all about him or her, not about a mass audience. That's another reason why we need our own persona profiles. And the list goes on. So I've come up with 9 that I think if you really looked at this, you would agree that it's very important that we go through the persona profile together as a sales team, with marketing involved too. It's very common for me to have marketing and sales in a room, and we do all this together. Now, marketing may have 15 personas, but we need at max 3, really, because especially what I'm talking to you about is top of funnel, where we're trying to start conversations with people. So we want to be able to focus on 2 or 3 influential people, the target being 1, in order to be able to start these conversations and move them through the pipeline. So a lot of this is now, since we're in the planning section, we're in the targeting section of these webinars, these are giving you some ideas of where you can start gathering information about your prospect persona. So you can gather things internally And all these little boxes are all the different things you can start looking for. Or you can gather data externally as well. For some of you who are sales reps, you already do this because when you do research on a particular client or a particular role or a buyer, you're going out, you're looking on social channels, you may be on LinkedIn, you may be looking at reviews, but these are other sources that you can use and bring in as homework to the team of people who are using products either like yours, they're using your product, or they're using a competitor's product. All of this information you want to gather internally and externally. And then we basically take this flow that you'll see now in these boxes. We have the name of the person. We like to name them. You don't have to, but the name of the person, what role they play in our sales process. Are they a decision maker? Are they an influencer? Are they a referrer, for example? The different titles and roles that they could use. Again, when I did this exercise for a client in LinkedIn, I came up with 36 titles for one role, for example, because especially in marketing titles have changed so rapidly because of the internet that we tried to group things by role instead of title. But we still want to have the different titles because, again, if we're going to go to a list vendor and say, hey, pull all these titles for me and get me counts, we want to be able to give them as much information as possible so that our data is rich for us to call on and email to. We also want to know the reporting structure so that in the event we can't reach our target, we want to be able to go up and down in order to talk to people to get an internal referral in. The next thing we want to look at is what are their objectives? What are their challenges? What kinds of objections will they have for a product or service like ours? And out of that pops your value proposition. So you take your SWOT pieces, and then you look at these roles, and you look at their objectives, again, with your strengths or opportunities, and you come up with the value prop for that particular persona. It's not value prop for the company as a whole. It's your value proposition for that particular person who is sitting across the table from you, one-to-one. Over to the right, we work on an influence map, which is the ability for us to understand direct and indirect influencers. We look at the buying process of how they like to buy. Now, this is very marketing-ish, but we want to make sure we're mapping to how they like to purchase our product instead of how we want to sell our product. So we do this in the persona development, and then we create a decision map as a result of that. So what I'm going to show you now in snapshot format are all of these boxes put together into one profile. So once again, here's some of the inputs in text format. I just showed you the graph. I'll let you read through these. The primary challenges I work really hard with clients on to not only look at them as a challenge, but also break them out into strategic, financial, and personal. So this is something that I don't see a lot of my clients before I got there doing, but it's very helpful for us because it's this now, and it's for some of you who are like, oh, I see where she's going. These little things that we're doing in the personas are getting us ready to write our emails, to create our voicemail scripts, and to actually create our sales conversation pieces. Because if we are talking to certain personas and they tend to have more strategic challenges, then our tone of voice and the way we talk to them via our emails is going to be very different than if personal challenges pop up more often, okay? So we're now really starting to get nuanced into how we're going to communicate with these folks by putting in their challenges and breaking it out in those three buckets. And you'll see an example of that coming up. We talked about the value prop. The way that this works is we take a challenge, we take the highest reason that they're objecting to that challenge, And then we come up with why they should change, why now, and why us. And we do this for every single challenge that we come up with, whether it's strategic, financial, or personal. Armed with this, do you think you guys will have an easy time having conversations? I think so. A lot of times I hear people on the phone, they're very unsure, not steady, not righteous. Their mindset is not of someone who can solve a problem for their persona. When you're talking to the CEO, you're a CEO on the other end. When you're talking to a director of marketing, you are a director of marketing. You're talking peer to peer. So this particular ability to map this out ahead of time in the planning will give you that confidence to have those conversations because you can anticipate the objections that they're going to come up with, immediately tell them why that they should consider this other option. So here's an example of a core value prop that I use all the time with my folks. Predictable prospecting model drives sales productivity by helping sales professionals secure more meetings with the right people, all with less effort. Salespeople really deserve to work smarter and not harder, in my opinion. And if we do this planning, we're able to do that with that return on effort. That's a big thing for me. And we went through the objections. Now here's an example of an influence map. This is Charlie. Charlie's a CEO or CMO. And what this map gives us is the potential points of entry into a sales conversation, that initial conversation. So let's say a lead came in through marketing from the product management team. And we have now mapped product management as a direct influencer of Charlie, the CMO. Most of us are going to want to call Charlie because we want to go hi, but we may not be able to get him, and the product management isn't answering the phone. So these are all the different areas that we can go around and try to get someone on the phone so they can refer us business, refer us into the right person. This is called a mapping tree or an influence map, either or. You do each of these for each of the personas that you're working on, because this gives you the ability to say, look, if I can't reach the product management guys, I have all these other humans I can try to reach during my phone time. And when we're doing this type of phone mapping to get appointments, this is invaluable for us. I'm sure a lot of you don't have this, and obviously marketing's not going to have it. So here's a kind of a lockout, a reason why you need to do this for sales. We are trying to get meetings. We need to speak to a human in order to get a meeting or get a response back from our email. So if we reach out to these people and we end up getting a referral, we can use that in our email efforts and in our phone efforts to get that meeting set.
Yeah, one thing, Marylou, that I'll add is a lot of times when these SDRs are following up with inbound generated leads, maybe people are doing some initial research on their challenges. A lot of times that'll be the, indirect or direct influencer, but I see a lot of people wasting time with those researchers on the phone. And a big trend we're seeing is that, especially with B2B buying, it's the millennials that have virtually taken over the research roles in the B2B buying process. So you've got a lot of those first touch folks that are identifying themselves that are probably not going to be the ideal role, but they're doing the bidding of your ideal prospect profile, and we need to tell those SDRs, look, here's the perfect way to get from the person that has identified themselves to the person that's really going to be able to make that decision and where our value proposition is going to resonate.
Right, and I can share with you firsthand that I have been stuck in the indirect influencer area of the bullseye in my life in sales, and it's not a fun place to be because we typically get stuck to the point where we're never going to get in to see the ideal guy. So this map that we just showed you here will give you an idea of, if you're still in human resources, for example, you need to get into Charlie. So you got to go up a level at least. And it gives you the idea of where you should be spending your time, as Max said. If you map it out, then you know that if you're still stuck in that third ring, you're not going to get anywhere. You want to use them, as this graph shows, as stepping stones into the actual target. And your emails and your voicemail scripts and your conversation snippets that you write down and memorize and own are all going to help you to generate the right conversation so that you can get into that target. So again, here's the text version of the graph for you to review at your leisure. And now finally, without further ado, is how we throw it all together, how we put it all together. Once again, these forms will be available for you to take. These are the exact forms I use with clients. So everything I'm sending to you all is exactly what I use with clients. And it really has helped them in order to be able to create predictable revenue for their organization. It starts with the SWOT. It then transitions to the ideal account profile, and then we build personas to accompany our ideal account. As I said before, in sales, we want to start at top of funnel with about 3 of these. Don't get bogged down by marketing who has 15 to 30 of them. We just want 3, and it's the 3 people who are going to get us either influencer, a key influencer in, where it says type there on the left-hand side. We want the decision maker, the key influencer, or the warm referral, and that's it. And essentially, if you're talking to, I have clients, for example, that talk to IT and they talk to sales, so they'll do one for an IT person and one for a salesperson, and then maybe one more for whoever's going to allow them to start conversations faster. So we are able to encapsulate all of that into a really nice, easy form that we can use as sales reps. Now, this particular form, I think, spans 2 pages, but you can see everything is here that you need. And if you're building it yourself with the team, as opposed to getting a copy of it, it's just going to be internalized so much better for you, really. It's a good exercise. It's not easy, I admit it. But when you start thinking about this, you will so understand where you fit, why you matter, and what kind of conversations you're going to be having with people. So here's the value prop. Why change? Why now? Why us? And again, we take this form, and once we get into the next webinar, which is the fun part, which is actually engaging and actually generating some opportunities, this is the baseline, the foundational pieces that we use to generate high-quality emails that convert at a very high percentage of response rate. We use it to create content assets, or maybe we take marketing's assets that they've built, we flip them sideways and we chuck them down into something that's a little bit more manageable for sales. But this is the foundation that we use in order to get to that next step, which is engaging the right people and starting to get them towards the opportunity. So here we are with the influence map. These are all potential people I can call and put inside my calling list if I get a response from an email or somebody clicks through to some content. Then I have this wonderful list of people who are just waiting to hear how fabulous life is going to be once they use my product or service. So where to learn more? The book is out, Predictable Prospecting. It's essentially available on most of, I think it's even in stores now, Barnes & Noble, but it's on Amazon as well. It's really the next generation of predictable revenue. It's loaded with email samples. We have in the back of the book, for those of you, because I know salespeople who don't want to read the book, there's a guide in the back of the book that encapsulates the entire book and does all of those forms for you so you can see how that works. I put that it's for the more advanced business developer, but it really, it depends on where you're at in trying to organize your daily workflow. and whether you're really committed to now going after these whales, then this is a good book for you. It's a good resource.
So Marylou, this webinar series, you know, it being pretty much a preview of your certification course that you're coming out with, what can people expect from the rest of the series? I mean, this was really the foundational element, ready, aim, fire, as you say, and this is the ready, aim piece. What can people expect from next Friday at noon when we talk about actually engaging with these folks, reaching out, email templates, and then the third webinar happening, once I get my dates right, on the 28th. So 3 Fridays in a row, same time, noon Eastern.
Right. The second section is we're going to look at actually how to craft the right message. So for those of you who are going to join next week, if you're thinking about doing that, if you could work through the prospect personas and get one persona done, then we're going to actually take the persona definitions that we've used and the SWOT and the IAP. We're going to start crafting messages. I'm going to go through and teach you how to touch these people, how many times we recommend, how to blend phone with email. And some of my clients are still email only. They only want to kind of warm up the chill is what we call it. So they are putting together these email campaigns that their reps aren't going to respond until someone replies to the email. So that's one version. There's a version that blends the actual phone with email, which is near and dear to my heart since I'm a phone person. And then also there's one that's called intraday phone, which is using that bullseye we just looked at together and calling in and around the bullseye for the purpose of getting meetings. I've had people use that, especially if they're not afraid of the phone, but I do have clients who are afraid of the phone. So we start with the email and we slowly work them up to blending the phone in and then intraday phone calling, which is the most productive and will guarantee the highest return on a list that you could ever think of if you're calling in and around that bullseye. The next area, week 3, is all about how do we optimize this thing? How do we measure it? How do we iterate it? How do we make sure it's not gunking up in a certain part of the pipeline? So it's all about analytics. It's all about tools. And then there's a section on how to motivate your SDRs, because we do have to enforce habit as a manager. If there are any managers listening in, we do have to enforce the habit of coming in every day, blocking out time to call. And I have a lot of information about what works and what doesn't when it comes to SDR productivity and also, you know, training them properly and role playing. So that's what's coming up.
Can't thank you enough, Marylou. Your book has not left my desk. I can't remember the last time I've had a book where I've written more things inside of it. So, you know, with everything we've got going on at PandaDoc, I can't thank you enough for your help, and really looking forward to the next couple of weeks here and all these templates that we'll be making available as part of the resources that you've put together here.
Yes, thank you. And like I said, everybody, this is a working session, so some of the stuff may be too fast for you, so just let me know, and then I can make sure that at the top of the hour we'll cover any lingering things from the previous webinar. That way we're all on the same clip as we keep going down here. There's also some resources on my website, MarylouTyler.com, that correlate to the book. I've had readers ask me to go in more detail on certain pages of the book, for example. So I recorded some sessions there as well that you can go and check out if you want to get smarter and smarter about this stuff. That's the place to go to.
Well, thanks so much, Marylou. You enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you next Friday at noon Eastern, and everybody on the call will get an invite to that next show early next week, so you can block that off. Same time next Friday.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for your time.